Welcome to Construction Genius. A number of years ago, my wife and I were visiting a winery, and they had their own little organic vegetable garden next to the main winery facility because they like to cook some meals for their guests. And we were just wandering around, walking the rows of this organic vegetable garden, and they had rows of the vegetables covered in nets to protect them from, the creatures who might steal the veggies. And as we were walking down one of the rows, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a little bit of movement in the nets. And I looked, and there was a sparrow stuck in one of the nettings. And the more it struggled, the more stuck it became. And there was no way that that sparrow was going to be able to get out of the net by itself. It was obvious that it would need some help to get unstuck. Just like that sparrow was stuck and needed help, so you have people in your organization that you lead who, for one reason or another, get stuck. And you see them struggling, and it's obvious they're not going to be able to get unstuck by themselves. They're going to need some help, specifically your help. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. And in this episode of Construction Genius, we're going to look at three things: why people get stuck, the impact of stuck people on your organization, clients, and project partners, and what you can do to help them get unstuck. So let's first look at why people get stuck. There's three things that I'd like to discuss as far as this is concerned. Number one is skill. Number two is relationships. And number three is will. The first reason why people get stuck is because of their skills. Many years ago, when I was a kid, I used to play rugby. I started playing about 11 and played all the way into college for a little bit. And I really enjoyed playing rugby. And at a certain level of competition, I was quite good. I was good with my hands. I was willing to tackle, all those kinds of things. One year, I was playing in England, and I got selected to play for the city team. I played for the club team, and I got selected to play for the city team. And so I went up basically one level of competition, and we began to play other city teams in the region. And it was interesting. I went up a level of competition, and I completely disappeared. I just wasn't skillful enough to play at that level. And I was stuck in my performance. So think about people in your organization. Think about the PM who you have promoted to the project executive level. Perhaps they're really good at building projects and running a particular job. But when you've put them into that project executive level, you've asked them to engage leadership skills that perhaps they don't have. And as a result of that, they hit a ceiling of their skill. And they get stuck in terms of their ability to perform. Another reason people get stuck is because of relationships. They have a relationship barrier that's difficult for them to overcome. For example, it could be client-based. Different types of clients have different mentalities. So think about the person who perhaps thrives in a public environment where they're working on a government project, let's say, and there's lots of rules and regulations, and you've got to dot I's and cross T's, and there's just a way of doing things. And then you put them into a private environment where perhaps the client has different demands. They're a little looser in terms of the way a project should be run. And as a result of that relationship difference, the person can't perform at the level that perhaps you'd like them to. They get stuck. Another example is in terms of business development. Let's say I have this way of framing business development for my clients. And one of the things I like to talk about is kings talk to kings. And so when you show up in a business development environment, when you want to develop relationships with a client, you have to show up with a certain level of equality. You know what I'm saying? You're not looking up to them, begging them for work, but you're showing up saying, hey, I've got something to offer you that can really benefit you. I'm a king, and I'm going to talk to you as a king, as an equal. But sometimes in a business development arena, people don't have that confidence to be able to show up and talk to a client as a king to a king. And as a result, they get stuck and they're unable to develop that relationship. Sometimes people get stuck on a job-specific basis. So for instance, you've got a project manager on a project with a particular client, and maybe it's a valued client, but that project manager just can't get along with the superintendent or the foreman from the client. And as a result of that, they get stuck and they can't run a project successfully. Or it could be an internal relationship that's an issue. You got a couple of alpha dogs working on a particular project. They just don't get along. They clash. One of them's got their guys. The other one's got their guys. And there's this silo that's developed in your organization because of relationship issues. And again, people get stuck. So folks get stuck because of their skills. They get stuck because of their relationship issues. And then they get stuck also because of their wills. It's really interesting. I was chatting with one of my clients some time ago, and he was expressing concern to me that one of his key guys had lost his love for the game. I mean, we know what construction's like. It's really difficult. It's challenging. But most people who are in construction, particularly folks who are running projects, who are in the field building the work, they're doing it because they really, really enjoy it. And when you see someone begin to lose their love for the game and their will begins to sort of shrivel, their intensity and their attitude begins to decline, one of the reasons is simply because there's a changing culture in construction at the moment. So I'll give you an example. Construction used to be very much command and control, right? You're a super or you're a foreman. You turn up at the job site. It's my way or the highway. If you don't like it, pack your bags and go home. But now the changing culture of construction is much more collaborative. It's much more getting feedback from guys in the field as far as how a project could be run, and then adapting and making sure that you're not there as the boss, but more as the leader, not as the cop, but more as the coach. And that changing culture sometimes doesn't suit certain people in your organization. And as a result of that, their will to show up and bring their best fades away a little bit because they can't adapt themselves to that changing culture. Sometimes changing technology also affects people. You might get a guy or a gal coming in saying, I'm sick of all this changing technology. I know how to build the projects. I know how to make it work. I'm not going to adopt this new technology. And their will to show up and bring their best, that begins to fade away as well. And then also what can affect somebody's will is a changing economy. You know how when things are flush and everyone is doing well, you can put someone on a particular job that they like to run, and perhaps it's close to their home and all those kinds of good things, and they're happy. But then when the economy changes and you have to do what you need to do in order to keep the company going, perhaps you want to send them to a different geographic location or on a job type that they perhaps don't like. And that again sucks the will out of them, and they get stuck in their performance. Sometimes people get stuck also because of a personal crisis. And you know how people's home lives can affect their work lives. And if things are going badly on the home front, it can suck the will out of them, and it can really hinder their performance. In those personal crises, you've got to be very, very sensitive, particularly when there's changes happening in terms of the way their homes are run or the homes are structured. I know when I'm recording this, we're in the midst of the COVID crisis, and people are at home more often than they used to be. And as a result of that, tensions can be arising. Conflicts between spouses and significant others can be intensifying. Conflicts with kids, simply because they're around all the time, can be intensifying as well. We're living in very challenging times. And all of these issues can begin to suck the will out of someone and cause them to get stuck in terms of their performance in your organization. So these are some of the reasons why people get stuck, okay? Because of skill, because of relationship, and because of will. The second thing we want to take a look at here is the impact of stuck people upon your organization, upon your project partners, and then also upon your clients. What is that impact? Well, first, there's this inward frustration that many high performers get when they become stuck. And you see it, they begin to withdraw, they have a lack of energy. Sometimes they even start to just to do the bare minimum. And it becomes very, very frustrating. So some folks, it's an inward turn that happens as a result of being stuck. For some people, it's outward. They begin to complain more. They begin to backbite. They begin to gossip. The silos that naturally exist in your construction company become more enhanced. And as a result of that, morale is impacted. Sometimes that outward impact can hurt your clients as well, because your key people are always representing your organization in front of your customers. And when you begin to hear that a client is saying, "I don't want that guy or gal on any more of my projects," you know that's an indication that perhaps they're stuck, and as a result of that, they're having a negative impact upon your clients. The same is true with your project partners. Right? If you're a subcontractor working with a GC and the GC calls you one day and says, "Hey, you know what? That superintendent or that project manager or that foreman, I don't want them on my job site because they're not doing the work they need to do in order to perform at a high level." Whenever you begin to hear these kinds of things, whenever you get the sense that someone is stuck in their career, when they're not performing at a high level, and it's beginning to have an impact upon your clients, on your project partners, or internally in your organization, it's something that you need to respond to. So that's the last thing we want to take a look at is how can you respond when someone in your organization is stuck? There's three things that you can do. Number one, of course, you have to notice. Number two, you must care. And then finally, you must take a small step. Let's talk about noticing. Back to the sparrow that was stuck in the net. I noticed that the sparrow was struggling. And obviously, being a sparrow, he wasn't really comprehending or processing why he was stuck. And sometimes people need help clearly seeing the cause of the fact that they are stuck. Someone with insight. And often the person with insight is simply the person who is outside of the circumstances, looking in, being able to diagnose for that individual why they are stuck. And this sparrow, he had no power to free himself. And like I was saying, the more he struggled, the more he got tangled. And it was interesting. I didn't wake up that morning saying, I'm going to run across a stuck sparrow in a net. But the opportunity to save the sparrow and to help the sparrow presented itself. And now I had a choice. So think about people in your organization at the moment. Who have you noticed recently who's been struggling? As you notice that person struggling or those people struggling, the next thing you have to do is really you have to show some care. And I got to be frank, I didn't have a rush of feelings of care when I saw that sparrow being stuck. I mean, I could have looked at it, and I know this sounds a little harsh perhaps, but I could have walked away from that and it perhaps wouldn't have affected my day to a great extent. But you've got to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's stuck. It's easy to have contempt for people when they're struggling, but great leaders have a care for others in their organization. So put yourself in their shoes for a moment and ask yourself, how can I help this person? And if you specifically can't help them, the next question to ask is, how could I get them some help? And then when you're asking these questions of how this person might be helped, as you're beginning to show them care, you do have to ask another question. Will they actually receive help? It's one thing to be stuck. It's another thing to want help to get unstuck. Some people are stuck and they refuse to see it and they refuse to accept help. At the same time, some people don't actually want help from you. And that's where you have to lay your ego aside a little bit, because perhaps they won't receive your help, but there could be someone else in your organization or outside of your organization who would be much more effective in helping them. Sometimes also when you see somebody stuck, it's not really your job to help them get unstuck. So let's say you run a construction company and you know that one of your project managers is stuck. Perhaps it's your COO's responsibility to work with that project manager, or perhaps it's a project executive's responsibility to work with that person who's stuck. It's not your job to intervene, but you need to work with the person who is stuck reports to make sure that they're helping them get unstuck. But let's just assume for the moment that you've seen someone who's stuck, you've noticed that, you care about the situation, but now you need to take a small step. And let me give you a quick framework that you can use to take a small step to help someone get unstuck in their career. First thing you need to do is you need to set up a meeting with them, a one-on-one meeting. And as you prepare for that meeting, what you have to do is believe the best for this person. We are all human beings. Life is hard. There's many struggles that we have, both personally and professionally, and you must believe the best for them. In other words, you are employing this person. You have invested in this person. I'm hoping that at this point in time, you don't just want to get rid of them, but you want to help them. So come with that helpful mindset, believing the best that this person is able to get unstuck and continue to make a terrific contribution to your company. As you're preparing, commit to listening more than you talk in that meeting. It's very easy to come into these meetings where you're looking to address a performance issue and just do a lot of talking, and you really don't want to do that. Because a lot of times people know that they're stuck, and what they're waiting for is someone to come up to them and to just confront them in a kind way and to really address the issues that they're facing in their lives. They're just waiting for someone to talk to them. And so in committing to listening more than you're talking, what you have to do is ask good questions. So I'd like to give you a little framework for that. And the three things that you want to cover when you're asking questions is you want to ask them, where are you now? Where would you like to be? And how can you get there? Just think of that, about that framework real quick. Where are you now? Where would you like to be? And how can you get there? Sometimes, like I was saying, people see that they're stuck. And so here's some questions to ask as you're getting into where they are now. Ask them questions like this. What's frustrating you? What would you like to change about your role or your performance? How would you describe how you are performing? What's missing at the moment? What's broken about the project that you're involved in? What's it costing you being in the particular circumstance that you're in at the moment? Really dive into where they are right now. You want to make sure that when they tell you where they are, that you feed it back to them so that they understand that you've heard them. So make sure that you're taking notes in a manner that is not, sort of recording them so that they can get gotten later, so to speak, but just so that you understand, that they understand that you're listening and that you hear them. Second framework that you're asking, the broad question, is where would you like to be? Perhaps they're struggling because your vision for them is not their vision. They may be a project manager, but let's say they'd rather be a superintendent, or maybe they want to get into estimating, and where they are in the organization right now is not where they want to be. So think about it in terms of their career, in terms of their legacy, and ask them, where would you like to be? Because when you ask them where they are and where they would like to be, that can then give you some insights into some of the issues or the roadblocks that are standing in the way between where they are and where they would like to be. And that leads you to the last general question: how can you get there? Now, this is very interesting. Put the ball in their court. Ask them first, how can you get unstuck? How can you get from where you are to where you want to be? What are some practical steps that you can take? Now, you may already be thinking of a bunch of practical steps that they can take, but you don't want to be sharing those immediately. Let them speak first. They might surprise you with the insights that they have. And as a result of them sharing their ideas, you can then contribute to their ideas with your own particular insights or the additional ideas that you can have to help them to get unstuck. As we're going through this process here, as I'm talking you through this, you might be thinking of folks in your organization that are stuck, and you might just be saying, Eric, those folks need to sort it out for themselves. Perhaps you've tried in the past to help them, but it hasn't been effective. And what I want to encourage you to do is perhaps work with them just one more time. Because I'll say this, they should get their acts together. They should get themselves unstuck. But just wait for a moment and ask yourself, are there circumstances in your life where you've been stuck, where all you've needed is just a little bit of help from somebody else to get you out of that situation? And so going back to that sparrow, it was really interesting. I was a little bit uncertain. I'm not really great with wild animals. I don't know about you. And I know a sparrow is not going to, kill me or anything like that. But I was a little bit uncertain about what to do. What if I reached down and jiggled the net and I somehow hurt the sparrow? But nevertheless, what I did, it was really interesting. I just reached down there, I jiggled the net slightly, and then all of a sudden the sparrow was released and poof, it just flew away, nice and free. And I'll tell you, if I hadn't noticed, if I hadn't cared, and then if I hadn't taken the small step of just jiggling the net, that sparrow never would have been released, and who knows what would have happened to it as a result. And it was really interesting. I'm going to share with you a deeper insight that I got that day. I saw myself as the sparrow stuck in the net. And it made me think about the grace of God in my life and how God in many ways has reached down in my life and just with his grace released me from the enchaining nets that have affected me in my life so that I can be free. And so that grace that has been shown to me, it really inspired me to want to show grace to other people. And think about that in your leadership. Think about how you have been benefited by the graciousness of others, and be looking for people in your organization who are stuck, kind of like that sparrow. Think about how you might be able to jiggle that net and graciously assist them in being released from the trouble that they're in. So in this podcast, we've taken a look at three things: why people get stuck, the impact of stuck people on your organization, on clients, and on project partners, and then what you can do to help them to get unstuck. One thing that you can do after you've had that initial meeting, asking them where they are now, where they want to be, and how they can get there, one thing that you can do is just meet with them regularly and perhaps help them to put together a career plan that they can commit to. And so I would encourage you to commit to meeting with people who are stuck and who are committed to getting unstuck, and have regular one-on-one meetings for them. And there's a resource that I've put together for you that you can download and use. It's completely free and it's rather detailed and excellent. It's a resource to help them design a one-page career plan. And just go out to my website, ericanderton.com/one-page career plan, and I'll put the link in the show notes. You can download that resource. It's 100% free. In the resource, it details how to walk through building a one-page career plan, and you can get together with them in the one-on-ones and go through that career development planning process. If that person is not directly reporting to you, then just pair them up with someone who can help them to develop that career plan, and give them an opportunity to paint a great picture of where they want to be, and then commit to executing that one-page career plan. All right, so I really appreciate you listening to this episode here today. My name again is Eric Anderton. If you found this episode helpful, would you please share it with other construction professionals? And also, if you think that we've earned a 5-star review, go out to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, give us a rating or a review. And again, thank you very much for listening to Construction Genius today. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.